All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
In the silence of the night where shadows softly play, a voice emerges gently guiding minds astray. Rob McConnell calls to us from a realm unseen. The X-Zone beckons softly where dreams blend with the keen. The cosmos, where the truth collides with lies, he crafts a tapestry of stories beneath an endless sky. In over 35 years of tales that twist and turn, each word a flicker sparking fires, igniting hearts that yearn. Dare to believe he softly pleads in this place divine, where fact is just a mirror and reality unwind. In the X-Zone,
and welcome to the X-Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell, and for the next, 2 hours, I'm going to be your host and your guide as together we will cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, and the X-Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight right here on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and of course on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. X-Zone Nation, tonight we welcome a truly unique guest, Mark Anthony, the psychic explorer. He's an Oxford-educated trial attorney, a best-selling author, and a world-renowned psychic medium who bridges the gap between science and spirituality. Mark is the author of the Afterlife Frequency, a groundbreaking book that blends quantum physics, neuroscience, and evidential mediumship to explore what lies beyond this life. He's appeared on countless television and radio programs, has conducted readings for people all around the world, and is known for helping those in grief find healing, clarity, and hope. Whether you're a skeptic, a seeker, or somewhat in between, Mark's insights are sure to open up your mind and touch your very soul. Joining us now to discuss the nature of consciousness, spirit communication, and the frequency of the afterlife, please, X-Zone Nation, welcome Mark Anthony to the X-Zone. And Mark, welcome back to the X-Zone. Always great having you with us, my friend.
Thank you, Rob. I love being on the X-Zone, and it's such an honor to be here.
Mark, you're an Oxford-educated lawyer and a fourth-generation psychic medium. How did this unique dual career come about?
Well, I was born into a family where it appears that psychic and mediumistic ability is a genetic recessive trait. In other words, it's like if you're left-handed, that's a genetic predisposition. And being left-handed can skip a generation or two. And for those of us who study mediumship as a science, we see that it seems to run in families. And so on both sides of my family, running back into the 1890s and probably beyond. That's why I say I'm fourth generation, because I can track it back 4 generations. But I'm sure that it went back further than that. It's a trait that both my parents had, and when you get 2 parents with the same recessive trait, the likelihood one of their kids is going to have that trait increases exponentially, and that child happened to be me. So when I'm about 3.5 years old, I started interacting with and playing with my invisible friends, but of course Mom and Dad could see who I was interacting with, and they were like, whoa, wow, he's got this. So as I got older, I was drawn to the clergy, which is not unusual for mediums because, we're drawn to the spiritual, but I felt it was going to be too constricting and too filled with rules and regulations. So get a load of this. I decided to go to law school. So talk about jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire. And then throughout the practice of law, a lot of people could see that I tended to know things that I had no reason to know. And then it got to a point in my life, and it's interesting, but it's a fairly long story, where I had to leave the practice of law behind and focus entirely on my spiritual work as a medium, near-death experience researcher, ancient mysteries explorer. So that, in a nutshell, is how this happened.
Mark, can you share the early childhood experiences at around 3, I believe, when you first realized that you were seeing spirits?
Yeah, I started having these invisible friends, and I'd be interacting with them, and I remember my mother saying, "Oh, my word." I mean, she goes, "He's got it." And my dad was like, "Oh, geez, he's got it." Now, the reactions were very different, and my mother's side of the family, they had come over to the United States from Italy. I mean, my mom was born here, but her father had been born in Italy, and her mother, even though her mother was born here, her parents had been from Italy as well. And on the Italian side of the family, Rob, they looked at this as a gift. This was the gift of second sight. They were visions of the Holy Spirit. And my maternal great-grandmother, my mother's maternal grandmother, her name was Giovanna. And she was known as the woman who knows things in Little Italy, in New York City, and in North New Jersey. And in fact, Catholic Church officials used to come and meet with her and consult with her on matters of theology, and they respected her gift. So on my dad's side of the family, they were white Anglo-Saxon Protestants from Pennsylvania, and they were hardcore Northern Baptists. And in the United States, there's a difference between Southern Baptists and Northern Baptists. You know, it's just a degree of intensity, I think. And even though my dad, he had 4 siblings, 3 sisters and a brother. One of his siblings, Marjorie, was a medium, as was his mother, Isabel, and their maternal grandmother, Grace. And they kind of kept it under wraps, though, although, it was kind of well-known in the community. And so their reactions were very different. The Italian side of the family was very demonstrative and open about it, whereas the English side of the family wanted to keep it very behind closed doors. So growing up with that, it was really cool because as I would interact with spirits, my parents would tell me, "Okay, Mark, don't be afraid of them, but you can tell them, like at bedtime, that they need to go away." And so they helped me learn how to control this. And what was really cool is when I started school, and I went to Catholic school, and I thought, here I am, 5 years old, heading off to Catholic school, and my father said, "Don't talk to anybody about this except your mother and I, because people will not understand, and people who see things that other people don't will get taken away." It was kind of scary to hear that.
Sure.
But my dad was trying to protect me. He was trying to protect me, and I'm very grateful for all of that.
Mark, besides being one of the most talented mediums that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting, you're also an author. How many books have you written so far?
I've written 3 books, and I'm working on a 4th, but I also write for Best Holistic Life magazine, and I've been writing for them for about 5 years now, and it's a monthly publication. We've got over 2 million subscribers, and if people go to my website, which is afterlifefrequency.com, you'll see in the calendar of events how to subscribe to Best Holistic Life. It's both online and a print publication. And every month I write stories for Best Holistic Life, and it's such an honor to write for them. And I'm very humbled and very, very honored. I was voted by the readers of Best Holistic Life as Visionary of the Year.
Wow.
2025, and on June 15th, a special edition's coming out, and they have me on the cover, and they did a 10-page exclusive interview with me. So people can find out about that. But the regular June issue, and I just want to talk about this just for a moment.
Sure.
June issue is dedicated to men's health. And think about it, June has Father's Day in it. And so I decided to write an article called "Real Men Are Not Afraid to Cry." And in the article, I write about the healing benefits of tears and how tears. It's been scientifically proven that when you cry tears of grief, they're different than reflex tears, like when you're sneezing from pollen or some type of eye irritation. But tears of grief actually contain the chemicals that cause depression. And in the article, I actually got permission from rock icon, musical genius, and guitar legend Eric Clapton to use some of his lyrics, Tears in Heaven, because I had the honor of seeing Eric Clapton. He appeared by video link last summer at the Helping Parents Heal convention. And the Helping Parents Heal, there was over 1,100 parents who had lost children. I was one of the keynote speakers. And Eric Clapton appeared by video to talk about when his little 4-year-old boy Connor died, very tragically, and how the pain of and that crushing grief led him to write the song Circus, the song My Father's Eyes, and of course the mega hit Tears in Heaven. And so I wanted to write to men, about men, and for men to help, and this is one of the things I do as a medium, is help men learn how to grieve. And crying is very important physiologically, psychologically, and spiritually. And my father, who was a U.S. Navy SEAL, I remember him telling me one time, a real man is not afraid to cry for someone he loves who died.
I've heard that before, and I think that is, that is beautiful, because for some reason, I don't know why men feel that if they cry, it destroys their masculinity. And I think that what it actually does is show. Yeah.
And we've been socialized for thousands and thousands of years that men don't cry, women cry. Well, and so the only socially acceptable emotion for men to display in public is anger. Now, Rob, I ask you, has that had a real positive effect on human history?
I think not.
Yeah, exactly. And women have been socialized where it's okay to express their feelings, express their emotions. And, I don't like to generalize, but I think overall women are better at accepting, confronting, and processing their emotions, whereas men have been traditionally taught to suppress them. Now, to some extent, it's changing now when you see with the Gen Zers. And I will say, like millennial dads, Gen Z dads, fathers are really good with little kids and babies, loving them up and holding them. That's really great.
Mark, I hate to do this, but I've got to take my break. Please stand by. Exo Nation, our good friend Mark Anthony is with us. His website is afterlifefrequency.com. And we'll both be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and the X Zone Broadcast Network as well. By the way, the correct website is theafterlifefrequency.com. Right, Mark?
Yes.
Aha, got it. Mark and I return on the other side of this break. Whatever you do, don't go away. And we'll be right back, because this is the X Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Don't forget, Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. until midnight, right here from our studios in St. Catharines, Ontario.
In the silence of the
Would it be the same?
Mark Anthony is our special guest, Exo Nation, www.afterlifefrequency.com. Mark, in one of your books, you state that you're talking about the electromagnetic soul. Could you explain the concept to our listeners, please?
Absolutely. The electromagnetic soul, EMS, is a theory that I have proposed, which has been widely accepted in the scientific community that studies the afterlife and survival of consciousness. We know from faith that every great spiritual teacher since the dawn of history teaches us that the soul, the spirit, the who we are, pre-exists the body, comes into the body, moves on after the body dies.
Mm-hmm.
And we know from the first law of thermodynamics and physics that energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. The field of science, Rob, that studies the human brain is neuroscience, and the official position of neuroscience is that the brain creates consciousness, but they can't explain how. And the brain, even though it's only 2% of the body's weight, it uses over 20% of the body's electromagnetic energy. Quantum physicists are now chiming in and saying that it appears consciousness pre-exists the body. So now we're seeing quantum physics and faith on the same page. So I developed the EMS, the electromagnetic soul theory, to describe in 21st century terms what we really are, which is pure consciousness, which you can refer to as a spirit or a soul, which is eternal electromagnetic energy. And the EMS theory explains the basis of certainly of the soul, of an afterlife, and it provides a rational explanation for all forms of spirit communication, from mediumship to deathbed visions, near-death and shared-death experiences, and even reincarnation. So I've been very honored how well the EMS theory has been received worldwide.
So how do you think that, quantum physics and neuroscience are actually going to validate spirit communication? Or has this already been established?
It's happening. It's happening. In 2022, that was a real banner year for afterlife research. In 2/22/22, February 22nd, 2022, in Tartu, Estonia, an 87-year-old man began to have epileptic seizures. So he's rushed to the hospital, and the standard protocol is monitor his brain functions with EEG, electroencephalogram. Now we have 5 different brainwave frequencies: gamma, beta, alpha, theta, and delta, and they all have various functions. And during the epileptic seizures, all of a sudden he had a massive heart attack and died.
Oh, gosh.
Now, this is significant, Rob, because, it was terrible for him and his family, but this was the first time in history that somebody had died during an EEG. And what happened astounded scientists. All 5 brainwave frequencies surged in activity. And that's not what neuroscientists figured. They figured, they just sort of fizzle out. Well, this sparked the lucid dying study. So then, at 567 patients in over 25 hospitals in both the U.S. and the U.K., when people went into cardiac arrest and they were being resuscitated, the medical professionals went ahead and administered EEG, like hooked their head up to an EEG to measure brainwave frequency. Guess what? In every case, there was a surge of brainwave frequencies that went off the scale in the people who died, and in 1 in 5 of the survivors who flatlined and then were resuscitated, they came back with tales of a near-death experience where they left their body and their consciousness went into the light and encountered deceased loved ones. And so the lead researcher, Sam Parnia, said that this appears to be empirical evidence that the consciousness does not die at the time of death and survives the physical death of the body. So in 2022, we received a lot of data in support of this, and all over the world now there's ongoing studies into survival of consciousness. So it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time before we have concrete proof, but we are headed in that direction, Rob.
Mark, you were talking about the different brainwave states like alpha, theta, and mediumship. What are the roles of each of the waves?
Yeah, the five brainwave frequencies: gamma, beta, alpha, theta, delta. Gamma is when your brainwave frequencies are at their highest functioning point. That's like if you're doing a calculus exam. Okay, I mean, you are running your brain at full throttle. Beta, that's the activities of daily living. It's a state you and I are in, and the listeners are in right now. It's when you're awake and functioning. As you begin to relax, you shift into alpha. And then alpha's the meditative state. I call it the groovy baby state. You know, 'cause you're relaxing, and it's like when people meditate, and as you start drifting off into a daydream and then into full-on sleep, which brings you to theta. And theta is restful sleep. It also includes the dream state. And then there's delta, very little brainwave activity, but that's when your body heals and there's cellular regeneration. Now, each of these brainwave frequencies are within a certain band of hertz. And on the alpha theta border at 8 hertz, this is what we've seen where psychic and mediumistic activity occur. So it's between the awake and the meditative state. Now, what's really cool about this, Rob, is this is why people have dreams where loved ones make contact with them, loved ones in spirit. And you think about it. How many people, they won't believe, oh, that medium can't do this, but then they'll say, I had a dream where my mother came and talked to me and it felt real. And you can tell the difference between a dream and a contact experience, because a contact experience is realistic. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It has a coherence to it, and it doesn't have that surrealistic, nonsensical quality that a lot of dreams have. Now, what we don't understand is why people like me are able to go from beta to alpha theta within seconds. And that's part of the studies I've been part of, where they've done hooked me up to EEGs and QEEG and quantitative electroencephalogram and positronic emission tomography. We're trying to understand how that happens. So, and it's funny too, because when people say, "Oh, I'm raising my vibration," you would think that means we're increasing our brainwave frequency, when in actuality, what you're doing is lowering it to 8 hertz. So I still think people are raising their frequency, but that's more of a term of art, like you're opening your mind to become receptive and more open-minded. But the mechanics of it indicate that you're not skyrocketing your frequency, rather you're bringing it to this relaxed, meditative state that is conducive to contact with spirits.
Mark, when you started this journey that you're on, did you ever, in your wildest imaginary sit down that we all have, you imagine that you're going to do this, you imagine you're going to do that, did you ever imagine that you would be doing what you're doing today? To here you are, you're on the front of the research into this wonderful realm of understanding, and you're one of the people holding the key to the secrets. What does that feel like?
When let's say 20 years ago, when the focus of my life was running a law firm and being a senior partner of a law firm. Now, certainly I've had these abilities my whole life, and I looked at it as part of my skill set. But it appears to me, it's been made very clear that this was the direction my life was supposed to go in. And I had an experience years ago in Kyoto, Japan, at the Zen Gardens there, and I was with a friend, and he said, just sit here and let it happen. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, you'll know. So I was sitting there, and I was staring at the Zen Garden, and it's just beautiful with all the patterns and the rocks, and all of a sudden I felt transported into this different state of consciousness, and a message came to me that life is like a river. You must flow with it, not against it.
Wow.
Now, and so that's how I look at it is, How does it feel? Sometimes it's always very, very humbling. It's an extreme honor, and to be honest, Rob, there are some days I'll sit there and go, is all this really happening to me? So sometimes I have a hard time just digesting this, and I thank the divine power, thank God every day that I've been blessed with this journey.
In the big scheme of things, what part does God play?
Every part. And the thing is, traditional religions tend to look at God as a king.
Yes.
Generally a very insecure white guy who's worried about people worshiping other gods, and if you're not tithing 10% and all that, and a neurotic white guy sitting on a throne with a scepter, smiting and casting out people. Reminds me of that episode of Next Generation, Star Trek, where Picard dies and he goes into the light and there's Q. And Q goes, I'm God. And Picard goes, you're not God. And he goes, blasphemy, I should cast you out or smite you or something. And
right.
It was one of the funniest things. And a lot of people tend to think of God like that. Whereas, as Nikola Tesla said, what one person calls God, another calls the laws of physics. And I believe that God is the energy that flows through all of us, the interconnectedness, the quantum entanglement. But God is more than just a series of mechanical or physics reactions. There is actually an intelligence there.
Mark, I hate.
Okay, we'll take this up when we come back.
But when you were describing how people, perceive God, I thought you were talking about Donald Trump there.
That's the problem with people who I always try to avoid politics.
I know.
Because everybody,
Sure.
You're Canadian, I'm American, and we do live in countries where at least theoretically we're allowed to express our opinions, and there's a difference between the spirit and the ego.
All right, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that as well on the other side of this break. Mark, thank you for joining us tonight. It's always a great pleasure talking to you. And Exo Nation, to find out more about my guest, visit his website, afterlifefrequency.com. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone, www.xzoneradiotv.com and www.xzbn.net. Don't go away. Mark and I return right after this short break.
In the heart of the night, where the shadows play, on the X Zone we gather, come what may, with Rob McConnell guiding us through the dark, searching for truth hidden, igniting the spark. Whispers of spirits, both gentle and bold, tales of the ancients in the stories retold, from haunted old houses to the echoing halls. We seek the unknown where mystery calls. On the X-Zone Radio, where the truth finds a way through the stories of ghosts that wander and sway, inviting the seekers, the wise and the brave. Join us each episode, let the curious say, with voices like Larry and Paul at the helm.
And welcome back, everyone. Mark Anthony's my special guest, AfterlifeFrequency.com. Sorry, I had to do a bit of a cliffhanger there, my friend, and please continue.
We were talking about the difference between the spirit and the ego, and this gets back to when we were talking about the brain. And neuroscientists say that, well, the brain creates the consciousness, the who and what we are, whereas quantum physicists and people of faith have been saying that no, the spirit, which is spirit or soul, and in the realms of science referred to as consciousness, pre-exists the body, comes into the body, moves on after the body dies. And there's a difference between the spirit and the ego. The ego is actually manufactured by the brain. I like to call ego an acronym for edging God out. And the ego is a very primeval. It's all about me, and its desires, and it's all about me as center of the universe. And think about it, Rob. Whenever you, and I'm not saying you specifically, but in general, whenever any of us does something hurtful to another person, were you acting out of love or were you acting out of self-centeredness? Me as center of the universe. When you say something unkind, attacking somebody you don't know on social media, brutalizing another person, abusing somebody, it's all me. And that's the difference between the ego and the spirit. And the spirit, the spiritual aspect of our soul, is selfless, and nothing spiritual is controlling. And so that's the duality, is we have this magnificent device in our head, the brain, capable of all sorts of calculations and creative wonders, and it's a control center, and it's geared for finite perception of our material world, but it's a limited organ, and it also houses the magnificent spirit, which is an immortal living being. The best way to analogize this is to say that your brain is like a computer hard drive, and the computer hard drive did not create the information or the programs on it. The hard drive merely hosts them.
Right.
So that when the hard drive crashes, aka when the brain dies, that information is not lost, it's merely transferred to another dimension. So in the computer, if you're hooked up to the cloud and it crashes, your data goes to Dropbox or Microsoft Cloud or whatever, whatever form of the cloud you're using. And by analogy, that's what happens when we physically die. Our EMS, electromagnetic soul, gets uploaded to this other dimension, what I call the afterlife frequency.
But how does all the data remain intact during this transfer? Because with the cloud, you know that the destination is going to be, whether it's a Google Cloud or whatever data center it goes to. But how does the memories that we have that are uploaded to the great data center in the sky, how does it know where to find it?
Well, we don't yet have the technology to determine that, although I and other mediums, and actually all human beings, because we can all have psychic or mediumistic experiences.
Right.
Doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's a psychic or medium. And my theory, my belief, and I'm joined by several colleagues, both in the spiritual and in the quantum physics community, believe that our soul, our electromagnetic soul, is a coherent quantum field. So that coherent field brings with it all the data. Now, case in point, when I do a spiritual connection, when I do a mediumship reading for someone, and their loved ones in spirit come through, the spirits will transmit to me pieces of information, evidence. That's why I am known as an evidential medium, and they will give me pieces of information that I could not possibly know. And that's coming not from me, but from the spirit. So it appears that the EMS is a coherent quantum field, and that all of the information, the data, yes, they are electrical impulses, but they're electrical impulses that stay together in the electromagnetic soul.
So would this be like the memories, once they're transferred at the time of the death of the brain, they're both negative and positive, and they route themselves to this data center, wherever it is, by following the electromagnetic field that is proprietary to these data points of this person's negative and positive fields?
I think that's one of the best questions and at the same time statements that I've ever heard on this particular topic, because certainly memories are both positive and negative. In fact, I did a reading today and for two ladies, and one of them was a teenager, and her mother had died, and her mother came through, and basically what I got, the information transmitted, the mother was an unstable personality. She was an alcoholic, and she just wasn't there for this young woman, and then she died of cancer. And the older woman was now her guardian, taking care of her and doing a really good job at it as well. And the mother spirit came through and acknowledged that she was an alcoholic and that she had bipolar personality disorder. But she said, I'm free of all that now. And it gave tremendously detailed information, both from the young girl's childhood and not only what this young lady's doing now, but what she is planning to do, and even mentioned a trip that she's got scheduled, plus the itinerary of the trip. So this shows that not only are the memories intact, but also the veridical perception. Veridical meaning the accurate and the perception of what is going on in a loved one's life now, but also spirits are capable of perceiving future events. So it was it's really fascinating being able to do this. And then when you start seeing the parallels, or rather how quantum physics is at the heart of how all this works, I think that this is just amazing.
The possibilities are endless.
They most certainly are.
Mark, since the data from the data bank in the sky has been sent there by this person whose brain has died and is now residing in its own little bit of this great massive giga trig or whatever size storage area that you have, is it possible that someone other than the original owner of this data set could actually have that data set put in them, and that person would then have the memories of the person who they originally belonged to? And if so, would this help, or partially help us to understand reincarnation?
Absolutely. In reincarnation, see, our EMS, our electromagnetic soul, is, yes, it's housed in our brain, but energetically it is linked to the collective consciousness. And getting into everything's made of molecules, which are made of atoms, which are made of electrons, protons, neutrons, which go all the way down to the smallest particle of quantum, which is pure electromagnetic energy. And that explains how and why everything is energetically linked and connected. And so when we die, think of your EMS as a librarian, and the librarian has read all of these different books. We'll say read one, the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin, another one, the diary of Anne Frank, and the other one, Spare by Prince Harry, okay? So let's say that you want to talk to, you're a relative of Anne Frank, and she died in World War II, and you may be a relative, but Anne Frank has reincarnated as Meghan Markle, who's in the book Spare. Even though the spirit has reincarnated, the higher aspects of the electromagnetic soul contains the memories and the personal memories and the personalities of all these different lifetimes. So normally, all the characters in these books don't know each other, okay? But there are some people, and I just gave a presentation the other day and gave case studies of children who remembered prior lifetimes that were recent enough ago to where everything that they brought up could be verified. And so it is possible to spiritually communicate with somebody who has reincarnated, because when we're dealing with the electromagnetic soul, we're dealing with an infinite, immortal being that is pretty pretty darn complex. So anyway, I'm giving you a very quick explanation of a very complex phenomenon.
So, if I can use this analogy, then we're all part of the greater collective, just like as in Star Trek on the Borg.
Yes, yes, and the problem with the Borg, which is a great analogy, is individuality is suppressed and crushed by that. Whereas with the collective consciousness, individuality is our own uniqueness. It's a gift from the divine. And it's interesting, I was writing an article today for Best Holistic Life magazine, and a part of it was about Leonardo da Vinci. And we're all familiar with the Vitruvian Man. That's, it's a circle with a naked male in it,
right,
with his arms outstretched, and you see like four arms and two legs because of the different positions. And the Vitruvian Man is a beautiful exercise in proportions, because your arm span is equal to your height from head to your feet. People that don't have any variations, disabilities, or medical conditions varying on that. But the thing about the Vitruvian Man is not only is it a symbol of art and science, but it was Leonardo's way of saying how humanity is interconnected with the entire universe.
Stand by, my friend. I've got to take my final break. Exonation, Mark Anthony is our special guest. His website is afterlifefrequency.com. And when we come back, we're going to find out where you can visit and listen to Mark on his trip around the United States. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. Whatever you do, don't go away.
The ancients in the stories retold, from haunted old houses to the... From Newfoundland shores to the peaks so grand, we walk together united in this land. Every culture, every heart, a story to unfold. In this living tapestry, our pride is bold. With the wheat fields waving under skies so wide, we carry within us the Canadian pride. It's more than a passport, it's a bond, it's a song. To be Canadian, where we all belong. Oh, proud to be Canadian, our spirits soar high, with values that connect us like stars in the sky. We stand for each other through thick and through thin, in this beautiful mosaic, together we win. Oh, proud to be Canadian, let the anthem resound, a place full of promise, our hearts are unbound.
Welcome back, everyone. Mark Anthony is my special guest this hour. www.afterlifefrequency.com. Now, all the music that we've been playing as we've come in and as we leave a segment are all available at www.relmarmusicintl.ca. I think there's about 40 songs there now. There's some instrumentals, there's electronic. Anyway, please feel free to browse, download, enjoy. And if you'd like to send me your comments, good or bad, X-Zone at xzoneradiotv.com. As always, Mark, great having you with us. Where do you have time for Mark to relax and Mark just to chill out? Because, man, you and I were talking before we went on air tonight that you've got this big U.S. tour coming up.
I do, and next month I'm going to be in Houston, Texas, between July 10th and the 14th. I'll be on Great Day Houston with host Deborah Duncan. She's amazing. I'm also going to be doing spirit communication events at Body, Mind, and Soul of Houston, and that's just what's coming up in July. And then on July 25th, I have what's known as an online Light Circle Spirit Communication event, which is limited to 6 people, so everybody receives a reading. So to find out about everything and be up to date, please visit my website, afterlifefrequency.com, and I invite all of you to sign up for my newsletter, and it'll keep you up to date on what I'm doing and where I'm going to be and how you can see that. And the thing is, Rob, I love what I do, and people are always saying, Mark, you need to take time off. Take time off. Well, I do take time off, and there's things that I enjoy doing, but when I wake up in the morning, I'm just so energized and thankful that I'm able to help people and work with people and touch so many people around the world. Like I said, I thank God every single day.
Mark, what are some of your most memorable readings with strong evidential accuracy? Any examples stand out?
Oh my gosh, there's so many incidents that were just so intense. Well, there's one that it's a good example of how spirits are capable of seeing the future, because according to Einstein's theory of relativity, on the quantum level, time as we know it doesn't exist. We always hear about people saying, the timelessness of time, and in the spiritual state, they don't feel it. So I was doing a reading for this woman, and her mother's spirit came through, and her mother started talking about the 7-year-old boy, and she goes, well, that sounds like my nephew. And I said that he's got to get to an eye doctor. And she said, yeah, he's been complaining of headaches lately. I said, well, get him to the eye doctor. And I said, and your mother's spirit's giving me a song, and I'm hearing Tutti Frutti, Ah Rudy by Little Richard. It's like Tutti Frutti, Ah Rudy. It's a really cool song.
It
Little
is.
Richard is a great performer. And she says, well, I know the song, but it doesn't make any sense. I go, well, that's the message. So, Rob, a couple weeks later, she contacts me, and she told me that after the reading, she called her sister and said, hey, look, I got this message from Mom through Mark Anthony that we got to take your son to the eye doctor. And she said, well, yeah, he's been complaining, like he can't see things clearly.
Right.
So anyway, they all go to the eye doctor, and she said the second they walked into the office, all of a sudden on the radio, it started playing Tutti Frutti, Ah Rudy by Little Richard. Now, I love this because radio waves are another form of electromagnetic energy.
Yep.
And if time is timeless, the spirit of her mother was letting them know that they're going to be in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, by letting them know the very song that was going to be playing the second they walked into the doctor's office.
Now, if that's not proof, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I think we're way past 1 billion to 1 on the odds of that's the song that's playing when they walked into the office. And I've got all kinds of stories, but I like that one because of the future event aspect. And that does come up quite a bit. A lot of times things during a reading don't make sense because they haven't happened yet.
So if spirits, or if not spirits, but if the ability to traverse time and space is available from the data in this massive data collection area, I don't even know what to call it, Mark. Is it possible that a question can be asked to someone on the other side? For example, what would be the solution to global warming? Would it be possible for this entity or this person or the person that you're communicating with to go into the future, find out how it was corrected, come back and say, this is how they did it?
I think that would be possible. What we have to keep in mind is when we're getting the information from a spirit, it's a wave of electromagnetic energy, and that wave is going into the medium's brain, going into my brain, and my brain's electrical field interfaces with it, and that EM impulse gets converted into recognizable concepts based on my memories, feelings, and cultural associations. And so we got to be careful on the interpretation. I was doing a reading recently for this man. It was a phone reading. I didn't know who he was. And also during the reading, his collective of spirits started talking about him with algorithms and all these scientific calculations and frequency. And he said, well, yes, I work with frequency. And they said that you are missing something in the calculation, and you have to go to the very last figure of the algorithm and then work backwards, and you'll find the error. And he said, that's so strange, because I was thinking the other day, maybe I should try that. And so the spirits were basically, in a sense, doing what you had just proposed. And what was really cool, they gave me this, it was like 13371, something like that. And all of a sudden he goes, wait a second, if I put the decimal here after 133, that is the algorithmic frequency, that's the problem.
Wow.
Now, here's the thing, Rob. I don't know anything about what he was working on, but the information came through. And so I gave him a number. I just had the decimal place in the wrong place, but because, he's this apparently this big-time quantum physicist, he knew where to put the decimal. So when we get information like that, we meaning the recipients of it, have to go over it very carefully to make sure that the interpretation of it is correct.
I'd just like to ask you one or two questions about near-death experiences and spirit communication, Mark. How does near-death experience consciousness differ from full soul transition in your experience?
Well, full soul transition, okay, when somebody has a near-death experience, their consciousness, their EMS, leaves the body, and there seems to be different stages of a near-death experience. Sometimes you get a floating feeling. You may see your body laying there, and maybe you're on an operating table or in an accident, and then you can come right back right away. Then there's it may go further to where you go from that floating feeling through a tunnel into the light, and you encounter deceased loved ones. And then if you get to a further point, you encounter, like I did in my ND when I was 4. You encountered the divine power that we would call God. And what I've observed is that while this is happening in a near-death experience, your EMS, even though it's an immortal living being, is still operating on a finite perception. In other words, it's still perceiving things not in the infinite state that you will in a full transition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So in other words, when you die and you don't come back, you have that full transition where you plunge right into the collective consciousness, whereas in a near-death experience, think about an NDE as your soul is attached to a rubber band, and so it gets pulled, and then wham, it goes right back to your body, whereas with a full transition, the rubber band snaps and you keep going, so that you then transition from a finite form of perception or way of thinking about things into the infinite.
Mark, like I was telling you earlier, time goes by so fast when you're with us. I've known you a great number of years, and I must say that the work that you've done as a scientist, because I put you in that category, and the work that you've done with people, helping them heal, helping them to communicate, to have those final words of goodbye that they may have missed the opportunity. It's just great. And for all the people who have the opportunity of listening to you on this show and the other shows that you're on, reading your articles, who don't have the opportunity to say thank you like I have. So from everyone out there, Mark, who hasn't had the opportunity of saying, Mark, thank you. A special thank you to you, Mark, from everyone out here.
Oh, thank you, Rob. And let me repay the gratitude, because what you're doing with the X Zone is phenomenal, because you're putting out things that a lot of times mainstream media is reluctant to do, and you're creating an open-minded forum that's very accepting, because now is the time for people to understand these things. And I want to thank you, Rob, and everyone, the entire team at the X Zone, and Relmar, and especially I want to thank all the listeners for tuning in. Thank all of you, and may God bless you.
Mark, take care of yourself. Safe travels, and we'll have to have you back on for a 2-hour special as soon as we start with our new network. And it's going to be great, and we're going to be part of the solution to problems. I really believe so in my heart of hearts. And it's going to be people like you that we bring on the show to share your expertise, to share the knowledge that you have amassed over the years, that will make it the greatest show that I believe it's going to be.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate that, and I look forward to next time.
Take care of yourself, my friend. And X-Zone Nation, if you'd like to find out more about Mark Anthony, visit www.afterlifefrequency.com. That's www.afterlifefrequency.com. Now, I'll be back on the other side of this short break as hour number 2 of tonight's X-Zone starts right now. I'm Rob McConnell. Don't go away.